I love that this is episode 23 for us. Actually, I have to tell you, I got a text message unironically from someone the other day that said, I'm just gonna, I'm just checking the notes here. Yeah. Love that for you. It's the first
That
thing.
it
So
just
maybe we're making it popular. I don't
I
know. I doubt it.
I also
Dave's beard's coming back. That's
look at
strong
that.
work.
Yeah, I did actually watch 22, and I was sick of the 12-year-old comments. So yeah,
Yeah.
almost
So were the
almost back to
12-year-olds.
normal.
Look at Ron's got his Bad Religion shirt on. Shit.
Yeah, representing.
Episode 23, by the way, we have there's footwear.
Oh, look at this guy. He wore his fucking Jordan shirt for episode 23.
Special shirt for episode 23.
This fucking guy.
This fucking
Holy
guy.
shit.
I love that for us.
The preparation on this end, guys,
It's always
it seems really seamless to you guys and really natural, but it's just
That's why you're like tier two
tier-
or one
tier
or
two.
whatever.
minimum tier 2.
At least two.
Aspiring, rising tier 1.
Yeah. Tier
You got
one
some work.
future, my friend.
you can't be that high in the ratings if you're not charging to speak at conferences.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
What I've heard.
You just crushed Ben's little soul.
Excellent. My little soul. You know, I'm not making money on the merch store. You guys definitely aren't. There's footwear in there, by the way.
Did you ever get yours?
I got them yesterday.
Did they fit?
Fits great.
Oh.
Fuck off. God damn it.
We have slides. Fuck safety, make money. Slides.
God.
And,
I gotta
and somehow shoes that have no laces have stumped Ron Gant. Doctor.
I don't get
Ron
it.
Gant. He's
They
like, I
fit
don't know
no-
which
they
way
don't
do they
fit
go.
me. I don't understand it.
So Ron,
Yeah, they fit.
2025. We'll start with you. How are things? It must be pretty hot for you guys at the moment.
Whoa, this guy. That's so topical. Yeah, no, we're all right. I'm kind of coincidentally not at home when the whole place is burning down. So that's pretty good.
But you have a Bad Religion shirt on
I do have a Bad Religion shirt on.
with the song Los Angeles is Burning.
I know. That's actually I
Pretty-
didn't even connect that actually.
That's what I'm here for, boys. Just connecting.
Oh man, I didn't even think of that. That's perfect.
I'm here.
But yes,
I'm here all day.
Los Angeles is burning.
Yeah,
it's,
it is.
It's not near my home yet, and I don't think it will get there. But other than that, 2025 starting out all right.
Other than that rosy news.
Yeah, I got Comeback Kid behind me because
You got what now? What's happening?
Comeback Kid. They're
Oh,
a
yeah.
band.
They
Play music.
good band, by the way.
I think so. They rock my
Izzy
face
and
off.
I saw them. It's a shout out to Izzy,
Yeah.
my daughter. 16, super cool. Went and saw Comeback Kid with me.
How's your 2025? Benjamin.
Big time.
Super. Well, I got a pair of slides in the mail and they fit, so that's
God, I was so excited.
things are going pretty great. Ron has volunteered me, and you know this, Doctor. You've volunteered me for a few things
Yes, I did.
already. We're a week into the year. Ron's quitting everything and then leaving my name, just sprinting from the room. That guy said he'd do it. I'm like Mikey in the Life commercials, the cereal. Like, give it to Mikey.
Oh, that was a
He'll
deep
eat anything. It's a
I
deep
love
cut.
Life cereal. That used to be my jam.
Yeah, it did. I have Beastie Boys behind me because
That's
not only one of my favorite groups of all time, they started out as a punk band
Yeah.
That's Kate right there in the beret. When Kate was in the band, they were a punk band in New York, putting out some killer shit, opening for Bad Brains and stuff like that. It's pretty fucking cool.
Awesome.
Deep cuts all around. We know who's behind Dave.
David, tell me a story.
Well, tell you a story or the story?
Well, a good one.
A story.
I don't have
Or
any.
the story if you have
Yeah,
these.
just switch it up a little bit, make it a good one.
No good, no good stories yet to start 2025. Not much has happened in this part of the world in the last week or so. Um, got Smelly behind me. Just a shout out to all the drummers. Don't always get enough airtime.
Amen. That's right.
So thought we'd do that. And I guess that's what your drum kit looks like when some clown from another band throws your bassist straight through your kit. So
Yep.
I thought, I thought, if we end up talking about resilience today, if we end up talking about anything today, I've been sort of throwing out this idea of talking about resilience. I thought, well, that's a nice little photo to show, maybe something that's not that resilient. Not resilient to being Fletchered anyway.
I don't know a lot of things that can handle being Fletchered, including me. 7 hours into trying to drink the Fletcher.
Something
Still just bitching.
think
sports grateful extensibility, Fletcher.
Yeah, I still think that that old Big Dick Nick was trying to set you up for something that day. It was.
Yeah. I don't think it was limited to that day. It was a hobby. He had been practicing for a while.
We're still in touch. He came over for Christmas.
Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah.
All right, boys. Dave, you're going to be out here not too long from now.
Yeah.
Feb and third week in Feb.
Yeah.
Might come back again in June.
Just get a little, we'll put a little guest house. We'll empty the shed. A little cot out there. It's going to be,
The
that's a good plan.
Yeah.
The Dave Unit. Also a good name for a band.
Yeah.
Dave's Unit. Okay. Moving on.
Moving right along.
So I didn't come up with resilience. I think Ron did sort of accidentally. It's kind of like his PhD just accidentally finished. It was such a good run for 13 years. Just all of a sudden it was a little shocking when it was done.
Oops.
Well, we were talking about fires, right? We were talking about
You did 3.5 hours ago, Ben. It was you. You just said we could talk resilience, since that's top of mind.
Top of Ron's mind. Just because Ron didn't have the language to express what he was thinking.
Do you guys have a separate chat going on that I'm not part of?
I mean, yes, but we didn't talk about that.
The fun
We're talking about fire and evacuation. Evacuating where you lived, not what you were thinking about.
All right, so I guess
not like colonoscopy prep or something. That's a different evacuation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so I think
resilience, Ron. So define resilience for us.
Define
resilience.
Resilience.
Well, so first off, where this came from is we were talking about how, I mean, anytime you see a disaster like this, you're going to see all kinds of examples of resilience, of brittleness. That's just everything's right in front of your face on display. And so that's where it came from. And that's when Ben was like, hey, we should talk about resilience. He brought up the great Richard Cook.
Yeah.
One of his videos on resilience.
That guy.
Who, I mean, honestly, like anybody who's seriously interested in the topic, you should probably just stop listening to this episode right now.
100%.
Go.
That's what I was going to say.
Some Richard Cook videos on.
If you're one of the 6, listen, read, watch. Find Richard Cook. Holy shit. That guy is missed, and for very good reason.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, resilience has a lot of definitions, right? And I think that's part of the problem when we talk about resilience, and it's, it's becoming a buzzword in a lot of ways. I know Dave Wood.
It sure is. The kids are saying it a lot.
Yeah, like,
TikTok full of hashtag resilience run.
I haven't seen it.
Really a buzzword. Okay.
Are you all up in the TikTok, Dave? Would you have seen it? Is that like you get your finger on the pulse of the TikTok?
It's not outlawed in Australia.
No.
Nothing is really. Well, really everything else is, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Only if you're under 16.
So one of the challenges I think with resilience is talking about, okay, at what level are we talking about? Because sometimes people will talk about it in terms of like individual resilience, and they often mean like bounce back, like you have like a stressor event and you bounce back from it,
Or rebound.
or rebound. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Where
Look at Jordan here.
yeah,
I
this guy.
was thinking more about
Fucking guy.
Wood's paper,
Yeah,
Oh,
Four Concepts of Resilience.
exactly. Resilience is rebound. Resilience is robustness.
Sustained adaptability.
Yeah, and then
there's
resilience has
there's
extensive.
actually five because Ron
Resilience
resilience as Ron. Yeah.
No, it's what it
It's
is
like the fifth D for
the
Dave.
four. Yeah, this exactly.
What would Dave do? That's a
All
50.
four kind of combine into me. I'm like the Voltron of resilience.
The Voltron.
Ultron.
Voltron?
Yes.
Do you know what Voltron is? Is that a thing in Australia?
This fucking guy again.
Uh,
Okay. Episode 24, we'll do a little primer,
We're gonna do a Voltron.
as the kids call it, on on Voltron.
All right, I'll do some research.
Hashtag Voltron. Also big on TikTok, I
Yeah.
think, right now.
Yeah.
On 40 years ago TikTok.
When do you guys do work? Like,
Oh, wait, what? Wait, what? Is that what this is about?
Oh shit.
okay, so the resilience that we're talking about, I guess.
All right. Yeah.
Some kind of definition around, a system's ability to continue to perform its function in sort of, foreseen and unforeseen kind of, situations. So I guess where do we want to start? Where do we want to start? What makes a system resilient? Maybe that's a place to start.
I think
one thing though,
really.
before you
It's Ron.
get there, I'm sorry.
Resilient Ron has got this.
Resilient Ron needs to say something, guys. Shut up. No, like I think what you just said it's a really critical, like that definition's critical to point at, because it's different than how a lot of people talk about resilience, right? You hear a lot of resilience discussion around, again, rebound, bounce back, about
just coping and survival.
exactly, right. And there's a lot of like, even in like, I know this is big in healthcare and in some other sectors, I think you hear about it, about resilient training, and like, and that's really about helping people cope with burnout and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
it's mostly at an individual level and helping them deal with stressors and stuff like that. That's not what we're talking about.
No.
Like, that's different than what we're talking about. And we can critique that idea if we want to. That could be one thing we do. But what
it's kind of like the behavioral safety of resilience, though, isn't it?
Absolutely. Actually, it totally is. That's a good way of framing it.
Here we go.
What you just talked about is more of a system level attribute, and it's also about continued functioning.
Yeah.
Right. And not just bouncing back post.
And not just a continued functioning, but a continued functioning at not a normal, but a desirable level, maintaining its intended
at an acceptable level at least, right?
So resilience, we're not talking about, we had a cool checklist and we identified that this plane was broken, so it didn't fly, right? Like the resilience is about the plane still flying.
Yeah.
no matter what,
no matter what.
which is
Get in
also
the
not
air.
what we're talking
No
about.
matter
Get
what.
in the air, motherfucker.
Cross your
Right.
fingers.
Yeah. We'll
Hold my,
speed tape it and move on.
yeah, hold my beer.
I
It's
think
going to be fucking great.
here's I I think what gets folks wrapped around the axle on this sometimes is you think about it at that system level, and then we start thinking about, okay, is it the ability to weather these storms, right? My favorite word of this is perturbation, right? Because it's a fun
Ooh.
word to say, but a word that gets used
You
sometimes
want
in
to be
the
careful
in
pronouncing that.
Yeah, too many of that you go
no,
blind.
I said what I said. Perturbation to the system. It's really, really tough to see that unless we're looking back on something. And as we're looking back on something, it's always easy to find a thing that didn't function the way that we wanted. And then what I hear from folks is this, it's almost disappointing, right? You think, geez, we're trying to be resilient, and there's always something that failed. And then they tend to look at this very large picture and say, well, we weren't resilient enough. And you have to do a lot of encouraging, I think, of people to go, look, hold up. These are all the things that we did successfully maintain system operation or whatever desirable state through. And yeah, shit went sideways here. Can we give ourselves a little bit of forgiveness or credit for that? And I don't know. That seems to be something that folks struggle with, organizations struggle with. So how do you fix that? Or does it need fixing? Just tell them to read the definition better.
Quit crying.
You're wrong. Try harder.
Yeah.
You know what? If you cared more, you wouldn't have fucked it up.
So one of the um, things I really like thinking about is, I guess, as Woods would talk about, is like capacity for maneuver. Or, for the Bayesian networks PhD among us, if you want to do it as a formula, to C little f m, and you can write this thing out as a formula. But
Yep.
and I think
Hold
that's
on.
what you're saying,
Taking notes.
Ben, is how much, how rigid is our system, or how much capacity for maneuver do we have? And I think in the plane example, I was a little bit flippant in saying, the plane's still got to fly. Well, that's not actually true. That system is about moving people from A to B. So if this plane's broken, do I have systems that let me reallocate those passengers? Do I have systems that bring in a spare plane because I've got some slack in my system? Can I,
Yeah. And
can
that's
I?
an important word, though, right? That
Yeah,
slack and flow, right, comes back to complexity.
yeah, and this is this capacity for maneuver. How can I adjust sufficiently to continue to do what I need to do? And I guess that's the idea that I most like thinking about with organizations and resilience. Just how able are they to adjust and find new and different ways of delivering what they need to deliver? And
So how do you know when you have that capacity?
Mm.
Because I think that's another question people have a lot of. Well, okay, cool. How do I know? Because we've gamed through all the things we could think of, and then this weird thing we didn't think of bit us in the ass.
it's probably a great opportunity for Ron to start talking about, trade-offs and and
We just
optimizing for
we
one
yeah,
goal and maladapting to
we
another
just set
goal.
them up. Ron knocks them down.
Maybe a bit of reciprocity. I don't know.
Roniprocity.
Reciprocity.
Reciprocity. No,
Little Ronzillions here.
How do you know when you have enough resilience?
well, that's the thing you can't, right?
Come on, that's a cop out.
And no, but so because fundamentally what we're talking about, and I think it was Lauren Hochstein who said this. I think I saw it on Twitter somewhere, but
X, I think it's called, mate.
X.
Your
Actually.
new American overlords are going to pay more attention to you guys being more compliant around these things. Now that he's moved into Mar-a-Lago,
Compliance or else.
into the guest house in Florida.
man, fucking guys. Oh, don't worry, the billionaires are gonna save us. But
I think it's more the title of the last episode. I think it's more about the idiots taking over.
oh, you kidding?
We've had a good run of NoFX titles.
It's so
You're
good.
welcome.
So good.
I mean, we have the one for this episode, right? LA is burning.
Los Angeles is burning.
Um,
Just
but
Fletcher.
yeah, exactly. LA got Fletchered.
They got Fletcher.
But like we have to sort of prepare to be unprepared, right? Like the capacity we're talking about is not just like I need to have a procedure for all the emergencies that I can reasonably foresee. Yeah, you should have that, but like you also need some sort of additional slack capacity, whatever, to deal with the stuff that you just didn't even think about. Like you just didn't think it was possible. And so I think, and man, there's actually not to keep beating on this horse, but Richard Cook actually had a paper come out um, with Beth Long, I think, before, and some other people before he passed about in a software environment identifying, because he made the argument like you just made, Ben, and a lot of people make correctly, like, hey, we haven't done a really good job of pointing out, like, hey, that's what we mean. Like that's
Well, it's
capacity.
tough, right? Because you're dealing with. I'm going to channel Donald Rumsfeld for Ron because he's a super fan. The unknown unknowns, right? It's
Oh
you're
yeah,
in
I got
that
a
space
tattoo.
of.
Yeah, I got them. I'll show you later.
But it's unknown unknowns.
Mhm.
It's tough to go back and say, well, this is what it looks like. Oh, that's capacity because you kind of don't know until you need it. Um, I think that's what trips people up.
I think that's the point of, we've talked before in the pod about Rasmussen's kind of dynamic risk modeling, our little Ron
Did you
model
just do a
where,
little heart?
yeah, anyway, so I know you don't I know you don't listen to the episodes, Ron. So
I don't.
it means something to one of our 4 listeners. Someone's got to quality check and keep keep some.
Glad you guys
That's all right.
But
enjoy
Yeah,
the
Dave and I have got
idea,
it
quality
covered,
check.
Ron.
the idea, I think the
Just
idea is you never know where that boundary is. I think that's kind of the point,
yeah.
right? And so we know that organizations are always pushing for more with less, and so we're that the model sort of Russman always talked about
Hashtag yens.
eroding safety margins, and then Woods talked with his graceful extensibility, talked a lot about preventing these sort of like, cascades or where the system just falls off a cliff literally and breaks. And so I think you're right. I mean, even though I ribbed you a little bit, you never know where that boundary is, but you've got to at least be able to sense and make sense of the situation you're in and how close you might be.
Well, and I think your example with the plane was a really good one, right? And it comes back to, do you have the ability to reconfigure, right? Because yes, we're going to do everything we can do to make sure that plane is reliable and, well maintained and all that, but we also need a capacity to adjust and reconfigure. Like, okay, we're not using that plane. Our goal is to move people. So what are the other ways that we can move people, whether it's another plane or some other mechanism? And if and that's where you kind of have this bit here it is again, had this trade-off um, between our tendency to want to optimize something and make it perfect, and what Woods talks about, graceful extensibility, like that slack that's built into the system, which can seem like it's waste, but is actually necessary to help reconfiguration later when you need it.
Yeah. I mean, Ron's using a lot of big words here. Going on a lot of
He doesn't know.
big words.
He's just,
But
he's got a thesaurus open. It's actually Chat
I'm
GPT.
just
He's just
reading.
reading it like software engineers do in job interviews.
he's going, gee, I'm glad I had a catch up with Dave Woods and Mike Rayo this morning and I'm fully primed.
Chat GPT.
I think
Write definitions in the voice of David Woods.
I think the thing like with we haven't talked much about Rene Amalberti on
Oh
this
boy.
podcast
Yeah.
much, but cool dude. And sort of he talked a lot about native resilience in some of the early work in the early 2000s around transportation systems and commercial fishing and things like that, and actually realizing that people are, we're, as humans, we're naturally resilient, naturally resourceful, naturally adaptable. and we sort of say sometimes to organizations, or I sort of say to organizations that your people in your organization are natively resilient despite your best efforts to kind of beat it out of them by giving them more rigidity, more procedures, more direction, more constraint, more conflict. So just let if you more let humans be humans, they better figure out this shit on a day-to-day basis for you. And so I think even though we use all these words around the resilience domain, this is a very naturally, humans in groups thing to do, which is to figure out how to work together and adjust and continue to achieve what we're trying to do. Look at sporting teams, look at any human pursuit.
Well, and that was sort of the advent of this, right? With the disaster, like you're looking at it in real time right now. If you look at any disaster, you're going to see communities coming together. I mean, and it's not just the resilient engineering communities talking about this. Like other people have noticed it too. In sociology, they call it social capital, right? To me, it's a similar sort of idea that we're getting at, is that people build these networks that allow them to support each other, help each other. And it happens often quite informally. But I don't think it necessarily has to. And I'm not saying we need to make it very rigid, but we should, I think, be aware that it's happening. And I think there are ways to support people doing those things.
And I think organizations also being aware that, how we design and run organizations is often working quite counter to, what we're talking about with resilience. We're trying to constrain action. We're trying to limit resources. We're trying to, make unreliable activities reliable. And I just think it's important for that's what's important for organizations to understand. Because I think to your point, Ben, then something happens and we just go, oh shit, like we're not resilient enough. It's like, no, because we designed ourselves to not be resilient enough.
Yeah.
There's a cool paper, maybe it's just a white paper, Elmar Kutsch wrote on sort of rule-based and mindfulness-based organizing, and how in certain elements of systems, I think we tend to do these things wholesale in organizations, in a corporate setting, right? We organize in this way, and that's how it is for everyone. And what he's talking about really is this sort of point of need organizational styles. So in an area where we really need resilience, there's sort of an end to rules pretty early on in the process, or an end to the utility of rules. And so it's a cool paper because it doesn't have all the big words that Ron's using. Maybe not because of it, but it is a pretty accessible read. If I can find the damn thing, maybe. We've never attached anything useful to a podcast, have we?
Yeah, why would you start now?
I'm not clear that I know how. But it's time for none of us have got new tattoos, so I feel like it's time to do something new. But it is cool. Maybe it's a 5 or 10 page white paper.
Yeah.
With pictures.
Now, and I think, rules is that's an interesting way of framing it, because rules often are seen as quite rigid. And so to reconfigure, you kind of need to skirt the rules. But on the other hand, rules can sometimes support helping people know how to
I think it's what a rule is, right? And that we're always talking about definitions here, but I'm not sure that we've even got a good universal definition for a rule. I think in that paper, what he's talking about is rule-based versus mindfulness-based, and even that gets sort of problematic. But there's cool combinations of those things too.
But we did an episode on rules when we were Vegas adjacent.
Yeah, we did.
You guys must have just been blacked out at the time, because I recall we defined it and we talked it all through, and we fucking solved that already like 15 episodes ago. So
okay. Maybe we should be some of the 6 listeners.
It was But I think it's a good point, right? Like you know, the why so why in 2024? So this is something I mentioned. Why in 2024 are we still making the same or running our organizations in the same ways that we have for 100
You know
years?
what? Maybe we did that in 2024, but because it's 2025, I think it's
Hmm.
all new.
Different.
Oh, so it's all changed. I haven't
Yeah,
been in.
new year, new me.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Good point.
Going to the
Right.
gym.
20.
I'm running organizations differently. Dry January. It's all coming together.
Yeah, there's none of those things are happening.
I think that's it's a really good question. I was ignoring you at the time, but I think
There's a
what you're saying was, why are we still in 2025? Why are we still running organizations like we did 100 years ago when nearly everything about how we organize, how we work, how knowledge transfer works, the type of work is different?
Yeah.
Is
And I
that
think it's
fair?
bizarre because there's a paper or an academic, Daniel Katz, who very big in social and organizational psychology for most of the 20th century, wrote a paper in like the early 1960s, and sort of basically just said that the great paradox of an organization, social organization, is that it must not only constrain sort of work variability. We need to know how people are doing their job so that we can train people, resource people, coordinate their work. And so we need to sort of constrain kind of work variability. But he said, but on the other hand, we also need to encourage spontaneous innovation because we can't plan and predict every situation that our people will face. So we've got to do these two things. We've got to kind of go, well, do this for the most part in normal types of situations, but then when it no longer fits, we trust you to sort it out. Right. And I think that's the biggest problem with organizations is how do I trust my people that much? Right.
Well, and how do people interpret that? What we sometimes call, how do I trust people that much? They feel as being hung out in the breeze.
yeah.
Because when we tell people follow rules, except when rules don't work, then definitely be innovative, then it's just possible to be wrong all the time. And that feels shitty. But they're really well-meaning leaders, right? That go, look, man, just trying to give them some structure, but I trust them. I know they're going to make a good decision. And the people doing the work are like, could I get a little fucking guidance here, dude?
And I think if we think
Because it
about,
does feel like that.
I think that's a point. Like if we think about really complex, what I think are really complex dynamic environments, like emergency rooms or natural disaster response or something like that. You've got a
Any
situation
stage with Fletcher.
where any of them, although that's kind of predictable, right?
Well,
Fair.
emergencies in an emergency room are sort of
You go into the
fairly
tiger
predictable, I
cage,
guess, too.
you can't
a,
be surprised.
a rule would solve that. Just a rule that says no Fletchers on the stage. Um, I think
I don't know who would follow that rule. It's not Fletcher.
it's another guy called Fletcher. No Fletch, no Fletchers. We already have one Fletcher. So like happy accident, like the No Homers Club. Yeah. We already have a Homer. Oh, anyway. But I think those environments, you just know that your expectation is for people to adapt to the situation that they're in, right? And use the information and their experience and their resources to do that. And even then, when you have these people in that environment, we still judge people harshly. The fire department did something wrong, or these clinicians did something wrong, let alone in an organization where you actually have zero expectation that people will, make things up or trust their own judgment or use their own judgment. So I think that's really hard, to your point, Ben, about hindsight, because you're culturally in an environment where you have zero expectation that people will be doing this, even though they're doing it every day, and
Right.
everything
We
looks
tell
bad.
them, right, to be innovative,
Everything looks bad.
which requires all these things that look really bad in hindsight, right?
It's like
Take chances.
the classic Decker paper, right? The failure to adapt and adaptations that fail, right? So,
I was just gonna say when you said classic, I was gonna say which one.
Yeah,
There's
which one? I was
so
thinking. I was thinking that follow the procedure or survive. There's so many classic tier one. Hey, but those tier ones have written so much classic work. So classic.
but
Shout out new book on safety culture. Shout out Sid.
yeah, it's gonna be made into a musical soon.
Full circle.
How good would that be?
oh
um,
man.
It's like a Green Day sort of punk musical. What was the hell's the album where it goes all the way through? It's like a single song.
the
Fucking
decline.
hell. No, that's no effects.
Yeah, I know it's no effects. I just thought you were getting confused. The single song album,
No,
18
no.
minutes.
Well, that'd be a good one too. What if we just, I think maybe a lot of tier one material and we just do it sort of like a rock opera setup.
So
Oh
yeah,
my.
Okay, sorry. So got us off topic here.
Is it American Idiot?
Right. Probably. I think that's right.
Okay. That
I don't know.
Allie was listening in on us and she just texted me. And so I'm gonna assume she's right because she usually is.
That's
So
a really safe assumption. Thanks, Allie.
good job.
um
Do you think Allie just
anyway,
wants to hang out more? This would be smarter.
she wants to be on the podcast actually.
Less Ron. Not
That
we
would be
don't need more Ron. No
Yeah.
more Ron. We need less.
So we haven't done substitutes before. We've had guests, but we haven't had substitutes. Maybe we can just sub Ron out.
I'm sort of an easy target here, aren't I?
Am I getting fired? I thought I'd get fired from my job
Wait
before
a
the
m- yeah,
podcast.
wait a
I'm getting fired from the podcast. This is bullshit.
Bullshit. You're not.
getting fired from everything.
You're just out of the rotation for an episode, right?
Ron's available for a lot. Work, podcasts, some papers, Ron Zillions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ron Williams.
All right, sorry. So the classic.
Oh yeah.
Paper.
But I mean, you mentioned like disasters, so I'm thinking of like firefighting. Firefighting is interesting because it does require adaptation, but it also has, the incident command system is pretty, fairly a rigid process, and you've got to follow it. And if you deviate from it, it can be bad and all that kind of stuff. And to your point, Dave, like if something bad were to happen, what would they use to evaluate, what the people did? They'd use some kind of standard operating procedure or something like that, right? Like,
Yep.
And I think another one, like police work, is another really interesting one. Having talked to some of those organisations and some of the safety teams in those organisations.
Dave's talked to a few before. So when he says talk to those organizations, I just want to be clear
on a Friday
on a
night,
very individual, sort of an ethnographic process. A lot of interviews.
in Vegas or
walk in a straight line.
New Year's Eve in New Orleans or whatever, just having a chat. But I think it's like where you're actually in an environment where you where to do your job you need to make decisions under pressure, with risk, with no time out, and like you say, it's going to be judged in hindsight by someone saying, well, I would have done this. Well, no, you weren't fucking there, right? You weren't fucking there with the information they had and the capability that they had and what they were trying to achieve, and in that situation. So I don't really give a shit what you think you would have done, because you weren't fucking in the arena at the time. So that's, I think, the hardest bit. And you were talking about Sid, and the hardest bit about, just culture work and something like that is the ability to not be that person who goes, I would have.
Well, and I think at the end of the day, it's just not helpful, right? Like if
Let's hope if you want to make yourself feel better, I guess.
yeah,
I would, I wouldn't have done that. Well, no shit, asshole. Like, you know the outcome.
Yeah.
I hope that you're not like, man, I will fuck this up, but even better than that guy.
And the interesting thing,
that's
sorry, Ron.
Oh no, no, just the one point I would make here is like a lot of people will interpret like what we're talking about not it not being helpful and stuff is like okay, well, it's kind of fluffy and you just want to let people off the hook. But if we connect it to what we're talking about with resilience and like people's ability to adapt to the situation that is dynamic and like
Yep.
there are real world firefighters out there right now that are standing between a lot of people and a fire that could kill them and other people, right? Like who
Yep.
have to be able to make these decisions without worrying about getting second guessed at every turn, right? Like that's
Oh,
real world fucking decisions that are
that
being made.
and that's
And
so Ron, I've got a question for you about Ron Zillions then.
oh shit.
Um, no, I mean, look, there are going to be things
I know there'd be a
that in
fucking test. This is
that
bullshit.
that in hindsight will be judged as mistakes, right? There's a really well, there's a lot of famous things in wildland firefighting, but Yarnell, Arizona, 19 firefighters killed, right? And in hindsight, plenty of people looking at it going, but that was a bad decision. That was a bad decision. The reality is they they did a really fantastic job of saving structures and communities and these sorts of things. And that's happening there. So how do you know what level of mistakes are okay? Because to your point, I mean, there are people that are going to say, I wouldn't have done it that way. Yeah,
Mhm.
of course you wouldn't.
I
Doesn't
think
mean you weren't there. Is
the only answer is that any level of mistake is okay. Like you just can't there can't be a line like who gets to draw the line and where's that line and
yep.
who gets to enforce it. So I think you know I this conversation sort of might have rambled, it might have felt like it rambled a little bit, but I actually think
What?
there's a
No.
really in
When
my
was the
mind now
last time any of our conversations fucking rambled, Dave?
Yeah.
there's a
That's a
really
weird. I mean,
there's a
all
really
rambling is okay.
central point here that I hadn't thought as specifically about before. But we talk capacity for maneuver, right? Capacity for maneuver requires adjustment and resources that can be shared, and it requires this reciprocity and teams kind of working together and to achieve a common goal. Now, if you think about like sporting teams, when a player makes a mistake on a sporting team, the other players come around, they rally around, they pat him on the back, they come on, we got to keep moving forward, we
Yep.
can't worry about the past and that. Whereas the interesting thing about judgments of mistakes in work settings is often the peers are the harshest critics. Like the research in medical drug misadministration errors, it's the other nurses who are more critical of the nurse, the pilots who are more critical of the other pilots.
Yes.
And I think interestingly, in these organizations, you they I don't think the team culture is strong enough that these peers go and maybe it's a little bit better in things like firefighting because they actually work more as a team unit. But I think one of the things that you know maybe is more clear to me in this conversation than it has been before is, how do you have an environment that feels so much like a team that people aren't going to be throwing stones at each other and, people are going to feel like they're going to be able to be supported. And I think that goes to the heart of things like psychosocial safety, right? Whereas I'm able to say things I want to say without being judged. The extension of that for resilience is I'm able to make the decisions and do the things I think I need to do without being, judged in hindsight and as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a really
The
interesting
reality of it
cool
gets
piece.
it gets weirder around things like when you talk about professional certification, like a nurse or a physician or a pilot or a number of these careers, right, where a mistake often means that the piece of paper that says you can do that work goes away or is questioned. And I don't know if I can go back, Dave. Do I get a rewind button to the, all level of all mistakes are okay or all levels of
You can
mistakes are
do whatever
okay?
the hell you want. Like clearly, if
Well, yeah, I was
there's no
only
one,
asking
there's no
We
one
have
to be
so many
specifically.
polite.
rules in this
That's all.
fucking podcast. You got to make
No,
sure we're on a pretty tight ship
I
here, man.
I think I think even on sports teams where they do, like you said, right, rally around somebody, uh, I don't think that means the mistake is okay.
Maybe not
I
Miami.
th
Anyway,
I th I think maybe it's just a recognition that mistakes are sort of the frictional cost of being adaptive, and that if we can make mistakes within narrower boundaries that don't affect our ability to continue operations at some acceptable level or bounce back or whatever it is, then we know we're building capacity that's helpful. Is that like, do we need two drum kits so that when Fletcher blasts one of them? So I think it's a little bit different. I think
Well,
it's
the
what you meant,
co-defendants
and I've
definitely.
just said it
Co-defendants
different.
need two fucking amplifiers.
Yeah, no
Oh,
shit.
exactly. But I think that, you know, the realization that things sit differently with folks, and I always think about this. And Dave, you spend a lot of time talking with senior executives too. Ron doesn't. I mean, unless it's for the conversation about being fired, that's different.
What's like
But
my
there is
one-up
this,
manager is 3 levels removed from the CEO.
but there's a little.
It's me and the mail guy.
It's different
We
when
have
you're
some intense conversations, though. I'll tell you right now.
And the
exactly.
security guard.
But when you're sat in front of a board of directors or an executive team and you say all level of mistakes are okay, they shut everything else off and latch onto that. And there's always someone going, I'm sorry, what? Right. And I think that it is that way in sports teams a lot of times too. They're not celebrating loss. You know, they're not just saying, look, we're gonna fuck up, guys. Sorry, we'll do it again tomorrow. There is a response to that. It's just a different response than you see in a brittle organization. And that's the tricky part, I think, is to take that out and show people how to build that. That's capacity, I suppose, isn't it? Or part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, and what you're talking about is the tricky part in all of this, right? Because if someone routinely is making mistakes, that person will not be allowed on the sports team anymore.
Sure.
Or the
Right? Like,
podcast. Ron, that's why we're interviewing you.
Or Ron,
okay, I'll go. Bye, guys.
this
We
guy
can give you
can't
a
even
pretty
put on
consistent run.
shoes.
23 episodes is a pretty good
I
run.
can't order shoes fucking right. Like, what the fuck?
Hey guys, why don't my shoes
Just
fit?
expected better, especially from a lead guitarist. You're carrying the thing, man.
He plays
Like a
left-handed. What do you
a
expect?
bassist, you can get away with this.
Yeah. Oh man, I can't wait to throw Dave into a drum kit.
Let me borrow one. Don't do it with the one I own.
um, but like, I think it's not, to me, it's about giving space, and I think this is what you're saying. It's giving space for the person to rise to the occasion with the mistake, right? Because I think part of the challenge with mistake, like the worry we have with mistakes, is if you have someone who makes a mistake and then reliably makes more mistakes, they're not learning from their mistakes, and like that's what people would. And those times when I'm talking to the male guy and we're talking about this, that's what they bring up. That's what their concern is that, hey, we're just going to let people keep doing the same thing over and over again. Yeah, sure, we don't want that, but like on the other side, you also don't want people so worried about making a mistake that they end up making a mistake, or they hide the mistake and we don't get to learn from it. And you know what I mean?
Ooh.
Like, and that's the
Is
hard
that
part.
where some of that anger comes from, Dave, too, where we're really shitty to our peers? Is sometimes the mistake making just means that I have to unfuck it?
I think it just depends if you're a fucking nice person or not, right? Like I was I was doing some
Okay,
hot
I'll
work.
leave.
Not you.
I was doing these. Some people are
These
just
hop
dicks.
shops.
Some people are just dicks, right? But I was doing this hot workshop, and this CEO told this story, which we were talking sort of about, mistakes are normal, and blame fixes nothing. Told this story about one of the energy traders, utility organizations trade electricity and gas and all this sort of thing, and had misread something and mistyped something and made like a $9 million error, which is like $1 million US, but big money over here. And when the CEO went to try to explore what happened with the executive general manager, and the guy was like, "Oh, so I guess I'm looking for a new job then." CEO's like, "Why? I just spent $9 million to train you to not do that again." And I think the point that he was making was like, if you're able to make that mistake and we just fire you and we just put someone else in this chair, then it's just a matter of when, not if, it's going to happen again. Now we've got someone who actually understands this failure mode and how it can occur and can work with us to strengthen the system and work with the rest of the team. And it's like, well, why the fuck would I want that learning to just leave? Because learning, the organization doesn't learn. The people in the organization learn, right? So you want to keep the people who've had the learning. So I find the whole
Although there's a pretty famous quote that is almost exactly that from a newspaper here in the US.
Probably got it from me.
No, it's a massive number, and this is like 1911
New York Times.
something like
Thank
that.
you.
But it's 110
You
years
invented the
ago.
New York Times.
Wall Street Journal.
Dave
One of them.
invented
I'm a columnist in
invented newspapers. But I think that's the frustrating part, right? 110 years ago or something like that. That same thing is in a newspaper article. There are people in industry that recognize it, and 110 years later, we're still grappling with it. And that comes back to your point, Dave, I think of, why are we organizing the same way that we did 100 years ago when all these things have changed? That's one that hasn't changed. And I guess if it were simple, everybody would be doing it. But
I think, and maybe that's it. Maybe that's the takeaway. And I hate that you got that takeaway, Ben. But you got to get one eventually. But
23 episodes, man, throw me a bone.
If it was simple, we'd be doing it right. And it's not simple to invest in resilience. It goes against so many other objectives and stakeholder expectations around time, cost, money. And to say that, we're going to trust our people, we're going to let them make mistakes. It's going to be okay if they make mistakes. We're going to support them through that. We're going to figure out how our system functions and learn, like all the things that we'd say is really sensible things to do, but not easy for organizations to really do.
Yeah, I think that's a really solid point. And I think one of the things Dave Woods would say is to that end, resilience is not a thing you have, it's the thing you do, right? The whole resilience is a verb paper, and so it's this dynamic process. So it's not something you can nail down. And there's kind of like a Heisenberg uncertainty principle that, how do you know, back to your question, Ben, like, how do you know you have capacity? Well, it's almost like when you measure it, like, that's not it anymore.
I think the tier ones disagree on that. I think Whole Knuckle says resilience and safety isn't something you do, it's something you have. So I think,
yeah. This is why
I think
that's why I was giggling, not just because Ron's funny.
That's gonna be act 3 of our musical.
I've got this, but can we do it like as like an MMA cage fight in Vegas or somewhere? Like I'm feeling like it should be.
I don't think between those two we're going to get a lot of like MMA.
Paul and Tyson. We could do it. We could act it out like Paul and Tyson did, right? Like we don't have to do it.
This is more like Tyson and Tyson.
We can act it out.
Eric and Dave.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Well, I don't know if we've solved it on this one. I mean, 22 episodes of solving it is a good run.
Well,
hopefully we did Richard Cook justice.
To me, I think that I think another takeaway is go and watch all the Richard Cook videos on YouTube and pull out a few papers that, how complex systems fail if you haven't read that.
The Tale of Two Stories paper.
Absolutely.
It's awesome. Yeah.
I think if you find a paper from Richard Cook, chances are it's not bad. It's not like you're going to find the one shitty one there.
So we may not have solved resilience, but we definitely solved Ronzilience. So
yeah, exactly.
Part marks.
I am.
You're welcome.
Embodied in perfection, really. I mean, I don't like to brag, but it is what it is.
There is more Ron in Ronzilience than you could ever hope for.
Yeah. All right, boys.
We do it?
23 in the can.
Nice.
So
later.